Hey, everybody. Xeus here with Sounds and Grounds. Thank you so much for checking us out. We are now on session 9. Believe it or not, we've had 9 volunteers offer their services and their presence here on our show. And it's just so amazing. So, of course, my special guest co-host, as usual, he came for the first episode and loved it so much he stuck around, Mr. Jack Costo. How you doing, Jack?
I'm good. This is one of the few times I get to sit down for a couple hours and just enjoy a nice cup of coffee and conversation. So,
Right.
I can't lose this.
No fear of spilling the coffee on the keyboard and losing an important session you're working on, right?
Something like that.
Right on. And we're very, very thrilled for our October guest, big finale, grandiose thing for the best month of the year for all of the sanguine fans around the world. We have a Swedish vocal coach, musician, extraordinarily cool, teacher-oriented vibe coming from Mr. David Akesson. How's it going, David?
I'm fine, thank you. Very fine. It's here. It's Saturday evening, and since it was a coffee themed interview, I brought some coffee. Normally, it's a little too late for me to drink coffee at 7, but I'm making an exception.
Right on. Now, if you're like me, you can drink coffee pretty much any time of day. So, being the purveyor of Blackheart coffee, as you can see in the background, which pretty much inspired this, as well as our guitar company. I have different roasts and different formats throughout the day. So, and it's seasonal as well. I don't know if in Sweden, what part of Sweden are you in?
I'm in South Sweden, almost as far south as you can get.
Okay, cool. I don't know if you do seasonal coffees. Like I tend to drink heavier, more filling, big dark coffee like in the wintertime, and then summer it eases up and gets a little lighter and cold brews, something I've been doing a lot lately. But how's it for you in Sweden? Is it just coffee?
I kind of drink. I mean, me at least, I drink the same all the time. I actually, I brought it. It's
nice.
the most common brand in Sweden. It's Arabica. It's doesn't taste that much. It's not very good.
Wow. So we're not going for the Gaviria endorsement today.
Nope. Sorry,
it's not bad.
It's not.
Gaviria or Javalia, I don't know. I think it's foreign or something, or European. Yeah. I remember being a kid, like years ago, 30 years. I remember getting those in the mail. Like my mom was one of the first people that signed up, and they started off like mail order coffee, and they were the little yellow bags, like bright yellow bags, and I think a bluish or black logo. I remember that from a kid. Like it was so weird to see coffee coming in the mail. This is like early 90s, probably 1990, late 80s, maybe 89, something like that. But they've been doing it for a long time. But it was really cool.
It's kind of a standard coffee that I drink. The only fancy stuff is I have my my wife's mug, but it's an artwork by Edvard Munch, the Norwegian guy with that.
Cool.
I like it.
Yeah, I can't use the mugs because they don't hold enough. So this is like a 32 ounce or 28 ounce. I don't know. Yeah. It's a gift from my brother. So, but it keeps coffee or cold like 8 hours. Like I put like cold brew in this, and it keeps it cold like all day. Like it's pretty good. I need to find a mug that would hold this much. like the meme where the coffee is just like pouring over top of you. But this is cool. Believe it or not, we don't talk about coffee a whole lot on the show. It's more of the fueled by Blackheart mantra we have. That's I know I've always got some Blackheart. I actually ran out. I always have extra bags. hidden around the house. But I got a last minute order. I was like, you know what? I'll just send my personal bag and get it done instead of making the customer wait for a week. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, oh, that was my bag. So like I did, I had to go to the store and buy coffee, and I'm like, the last thing I used to drink was this chock full of nuts. It's a dark New York style, it is Arabica. It's the last coffee I remember buying in like 2017 before I started. So like once you have a business or something, like very rarely, like you feel like you're betraying yourself to stray from the brand, so it's like I don't know, Jack, are you like this with your band? Like, do you feel weird listening to other bands' music, or
oh, not at all.
wearing another band's t-shirt? Like, it's like, can I do this? Is this okay?
I think it's different with art. Like,
oh, right. Well, coffee is an art for me personally, but yeah. So, dumb story short, I got this chock full of nuts, and it was so bad. Oh my goodness! I was like, nothing against them. It's just you get mass-produced anything that's been sitting on a shelf for 6 months, a year. It's not the same as something that's fresh, brand new, a couple of days. This was, crafted. But I powered through it for like 2 days till I got my order. So now I'm like, don't touch these bags. This is mine only. The customer always comes second when it comes to coffee. So I have to be able to function. But it's weird. You get used to something, stray away from other things, and something is better in your opinion. You like it better. And you go backwards. It's like, oh, that's terrible. So that being said, I'll stop talking and segue this, David, into you as a vocal coach and a teacher. This sort of triggered something while I was talking. Like, you have a multitude of students, and I did watch some of your testimonials, and I was really surprised because I'm familiar with you from Adrian Cohen's Twitch streams. You've been a guest on there occasionally, and shown some of your techniques, and she's shown some techniques that she's used of yours, and just the little bits of information coming from someone that knows what the hell they're doing and saying, this is the way you do A, B, C, or D. Do you ever have students that go back to maybe singing something in the past where they didn't have your knowledge and expertise, and then in the future and saying, wow, the way I used to do this was terrible, like, thank you so much? Like that progression to being educated by someone that like, you have an ability, like, you knew you were meant to be a teacher at a certain age, and you can tie that in too. But our meandering way of nonlinear communication here, to sort of, I know you've seen some of the episodes. One, what's your experience? When did you realize, like, I was meant to be a teacher? This is my calling. And then can you give a little bit of insight on how you've seen students progress just from what you've taught them and them implementing your lessons?
Sure. What the thing with the education that I had was, we don't have the same kind of system as you guys do, but when I was 19, I graduated from, you could call it like upper secondary school or something like that. I've studied music for a while, but also, all the regular stuff like Swedish, English, math, all of that. So I applied to the Academy of Music, not really knowing what I was getting into. Not being totally unaware, but I just did it, and I went there, and it was like 2 days of different tests. It was ear testing, and it was all the kind of, you probably know all of this, Jack, having done kind of the same. You have to it's very formal. You get in front of a jury, and but wow, you have to play a certain kind of, and you get a prima vista stuff you have to play, and So I did that, and after a while, you know, a couple of weeks later, I got like the mail in the mailbox, like I got in. So basically, going from upper secondary to the academy is not very common. So everyone told me, you have to go, you have to go. And I didn't really know if I wanted to, but I started, you know, of course, a part of me wanted to, but, you know, is there anything else I'd like to? But all I knew is that I'd love to do something with music. So this was not a performer program. It was a teacher program. And then you have to specialize after like a year. Then you have to specialize in certain directions, and you have to make more tests. And I, somewhere along the way during these 5 years, I kind of realized that yes, I am becoming a teacher whether I like it or not. So I might as well do it as good as I can, or as well as I can. So, but I don't really know. It kind of grew on me, and even after I started to work, now I work at a upper secondary school teaching vocals like that. So that's what I was trained for, and that's what I do. And I also have some, you know, ensemble playing, musical theater class, some other stuff, and it differs and varies a little bit year from year. But from the moment when we started to have practice students, you know, I'm in a room, I'm at the piano, I have a student that I'm teaching, and then there is my teacher and a couple of other students watching me. And, you know, and the next day it's me sitting there. But when I started to do that, that's when I felt like this is the thing. This is where, because I loved almost everything at the academy, you know, because all the teachers, and it's probably the same with Berkeley, I guess, Jack, you know, you come out of arrangement class like, I'm going to be an arranger. Or like for me, I come out of choir conducting class like, this is what I'm, you know, every day. Or like, how about doing research on pedagogy? Because, you know, every teacher was so inspirational. They were so great. So I wanted to do it all. But when I was in that room, when I was teaching, that's when I felt like all the stuff that I do best kind of trickles down and boils down to this. So somewhere along the way, but probably in that room with those practice students, that's probably when I knew, like, I am going to enjoy this.
Right.
And to tie into that progress thing, the students that I teach at my day job, I have them for 3 years. They're between 16 and 19, and I almost always, I'm very meticulous. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
About, you
like
know,
detail oriented.
Yeah, about, you know, writing stuff down with students, and I always write down what songs we work on to remember. Oh yeah, we did that. So I try to, you know, when they're about to graduate, it's like, hey, do you remember your first homework? Like, want to give it a go? And, you know, I almost do that all the time. Wow. And then we sing, you know, it's a kind of nice way, I think, to wrap things up a bit after 3 years. And, you know, you pull out the stuff that you did very early on in first grade and sing it. And almost without exception, you know, every student, you know, it's so noticeable, you know, and they remember struggling with this or not being satisfied. It's like, so I do that. I can see the progress. Sometimes it's hard to see during the process, you know, but those kind of wrapping up things, I really enjoy that.
Yeah,
that's really cool. It's really interesting to hear your experience as a music student over in Sweden, because I, like you said, I probably understand because of the Berkeley thing, but that was not my experience at Berkeley at all. Like there were I could count probably on one hand the teachers that were like, you could tell they were super inspired and super inspiring to be around, and still really were in love with what they're teaching, but so many people were not that way, and a lot of it was really a struggle, whether that's systemic with how colleges and universities are run over here, or whether that's just however many years of teaching kids that are trying, there to do one thing that don't really care about conducting class. And I don't know what the deal is, but it was, I still remember the like few teachers that really inspired me, and I don't remember much of the other ones. Like there's still such a wealth of information that I absorbed and then kept what I still use, I think. But it was, yeah, I wish it was that way. I wish more people had that experience over here.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Do you feel, Jack, like what are the teachers' backgrounds at Berkeley? And then David, you can maybe add to this as well. Like I feel like maybe from just taking music lessons sporadically through life, some of the worst teachers were the failed musicians. Like they had a career as a musician at one point, or they tried a career and then they kind of fell back into teaching, as opposed to people I've known that taught. Like they may have played in bands or done a little bit, but sounding like David's background, he right off the bat was like, teaching, it seems like a thing I should get into. Did you kind of see that at Berkeley? Like these guys or girls, male and female teachers, obviously, like maybe their backgrounds is not being like, they fell back into teaching sometimes happens. Was it that at all, or just some unknown factor that made them bad at their jobs?
Maybe there was a little bit of that. I wouldn't really know how to pin down what exactly it was, but I do think the difference for me between a teacher that inspired me and one that didn't is the teachers that inspired me looked at what I was excited about and what I was interested in, and found the best way to bring that out and fill in the gaps of knowledge that would keep me going towards what I was interested in. Whereas the ones that didn't seem to only really care a lot more about the students that were really into specifically what they thought was cool or what they did, or so for instance, like I hope this person isn't watching this, but I had I had a credit to fill at one point, and I did an ensemble, like a music of the Beatles ensemble. And I'm not like a huge Beatles fan, but you can't deny what they did for music in general. So I'm like, okay, this is cool.
I'll deny it. I'll deny what they did, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
They killed music. They made a formulaic way to be hit songwriters and to brainwash the masses of young American teenage girls and or boys. You know what I say about the Beatles? Two down, two to go. Booyah. All right, go ahead. We can cut that out. I don't like the Beatles. I'm sorry. You know what? I don't know.
I think that's maybe the worst thing you've ever said on this podcast.
Is it? That's the worst?
That might be the worst thing. Okay. Regardless.
Yeah.
Well, I should say 3 down, because Paul McCartney is a replacement. The original died in the 60s. I'm more interested in the lore of what happened. Like he died in a car wreck like after their second album, and they replaced him because the guy's face is different. Dude, come on, man. 3 a.m, I'm looking at this stuff. I'm Googling it. I'm doing that. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to...
It's because you had too much coffee late in the day and you're up
right.
to...
Right. Too much coffee. I had too much coffee. Yeah. I gotta get some more coffee right now. Think about it. Anyway, so what the Beatles did. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I happened to take this music of the Beatles ensemble during the 50th anniversary of when the Beatles came over and did the Ed Sullivan Show here in America. So there, I think it was CNN was there to interview Berkeley staff and students who were doing, you know, Beatles stuff this year for like a story. And they interviewed all of us in the class. And basically the question they asked everybody is like, what does the music of the Beatles mean to you? And I gave, you know, I thought nothing of it. And in front of, I was just like, well, a lot of musicians that I grew up with and that I really respected grew up with the Beatles. So I wanted to learn what they saw that inspired them by tracing the steps back. And I thought that was a really cool answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Like, that's how you say it without.
Yeah.
That answer would not offend anybody in my book.
It offended the teacher. He was not happy, and they used that in the program, like for the news thing, and like she was so hard on me for that entire class because of this. It was like, oh, you don't think that the Beatles are the coolest thing ever? You know, well, you know, I'm going to ignore you until you're doing something wrong. And then I'm going to point it out in front of everybody. And then we're going to move on. Like, it was just like, it was almost like personal, like,
yeah,
a weird jealousy thing. But, and that's a very extreme example. But I did feel like there was a lot of that where if you weren't exactly in the same boat as the teacher about what specific artists or things were really cool, they kind of wrote you off and just taught the ones that were into that. And not that you should rule out things that you aren't interested in, but it kills the fun a little bit when your teacher is not excited about something that you are, you know?
Right.
And I'm not a teacher for a living and I know nothing about it, but I am a student quite often. So I remember that being kind of a lame experience, but it did highlight some of the cool experiences that I did have, you know?
Yeah, so light and dark.
Yeah, but also, you know, that is kind of what I dislike the most about bad teachers. And I rather talk about good teachers, but what kind of defines most of the bad teachers that I see is the ones that kind of like you were talking about, Xeus, the kind of failed musicians who see the teaching floor as another stage for them to perform on. You know, where they are the focus of attention, where it really, really, really should be the opposite. So that's what I dislike the most. People who you know, ta-da, here I am, here to teach. You know, and you know, they make it about themselves. You know, of course you can talk about yourself and you can talk about your own personal, you know, if a student has a problem, you can always, you know, refer to either yourself or whatever. But you know, when they see it as you know, a performance.
Right. It's the spotlight, like you said, the spotlight's on them. And you wording it like immediately, two different teachers I had for guitar in the past. So I've worked in a lot of music instrument retail shops throughout my youth and early adulthood. And I would spend the most time with the teachers and listen to them and see how they interacted. And I actually taught for a short amount of time. One of my best and most talented students was this 10-year-old kid from Sweden named Andreas, who turned out to be an amazing engineer. Hopefully get him on the program. He engineered and produced and did everything with like the first Black Dahlia album and bands of that nature. I want to say he was about 12 years old and he was coming into a store and he was into metal. Like I think pretty much every Swedish male adolescent must be a metalhead. Just looking at all the amazing bands coming out of Sweden. But he was learning guitar and things like that. And would always come in early. So, punctuation was very important, that European and Nordic thing I've had experience with. And then we started talking about computers and recording, because I had always built, computer systems. I have a background in, websites and hardware management stuff. But we started talking about computers and software. And then he was maybe 13 or so, and I built him a little Pro Tools rig, and he started recording like hardcore bands and stuff, and his friends. And then all of a sudden I'm looking online and see his name. It's like, wow, he's doing this, and has like a big studio here in Virginia, in Richmond. But back to the teachers thing, once I had a student, and he basically surpassed what I could teach him in like a month. Like, I was like, you need to, like, he wanted to understand like guitars and why it sounded heavy. So that's basically like an hour to be like, well, you're playing a Strat, you need something with humbucker, a fat Gibson type pickup, you need a little distortion pedal, this and that. But at some point he wanted to learn stuff that I couldn't play. I was like, well, the teachers, like, stick with the teachers here, because they have the ability. And the best teacher there was like this super religious guy that could play any style, like fingerstyle, but he would teach the metal songs on an acoustic and make it sound good. And he was always about the students, and he would walk around playing like he was practicing in between lessons, and always was like zoned into the kid that he was teaching, and how to make them better, and how to present practice to them where it fit. He wasn't like regimented, like do this, do this, do this, and if you don't come back next week, this is the consequence. He was very fluid in his teaching method, and I gravitated into that. I was like, man, I learned more listening to him teach and talk than I ever learned from bad teacher number 2, who played in a bunch of hard rock bands, was always late to the lesson, always would come in with his guitar, like he'd run in, he would sit down, maybe had a gig the night before or something, but the practice was him just shredding, like playing leads and practicing. And the kids were like, I just want to learn how to play a Nirvana song. And the guy's like, well, you need to be learning how to play this lead from like Bang Tango or some crazy like a glam metal band that had like shredders back in the 90s. And none of his students would come back after, I think you prepaid for like 2 or 3. Like, none of them would come back. And there was a lot of complaints. And I was like, this is the worst teacher I've ever saw. And David, your explanation is like, yeah, the spotlight was on him. His band never amounted to anything. Unfortunately, they were a band in the local area and played, but they never toured or did anything on a label. And I feel like that discouraged so many kids from achieving and being inspired, Jack, like what you said, like taking what you could. Like, I couldn't take one thing out of his lesson that I could use, other than like, I won't do any of this stuff ever, like to anyone, no matter what I'm teaching. So that's very important. And hearing, David, your background and your vibe, like, that's how a teacher should be. It's like, if you're not into what the kid wants to learn, you figure out a way to make it cool, and so they learn and get inspired. So it seems like a universal thing. If you're a good teacher, like, that's what you do.
Yeah, and especially like the thing you mentioned about being fluid in your teaching, and realizing that not everyone learns the same way or want to learn the same stuff, because you also see that sometimes in online forums and stuff. You have to do this, or you have to do that, or this is the way to do it, or and that's, I mean, so there are amazing and great teachers without a formal, training. There are really bad ones and there are really good ones, and there are really bad ones and really good ones with a formal training. But well, I usually say that the ones with a formal training should be good. The ones without could be good. But mostly the bad ones without any formal training, they learned, you know, they teach the way they learned themselves. And I was taught to teach the way the student learns the best. That was what I was taught. And of course, then there is a lot of theory you have to learn about pedagogy and, you know, phrasing things, how you say it, and you know, how to explain things, and, you know, and then of course if you do it in your second language, it's even harder. But you know, so, and then it's trial and error. And I think the best way is to, you know, be kind of open with, okay, so we're trying this out, this is perhaps what's troubling you, let's try it. Not going like, okay, I can hear this is you know, your tongue is tensed, you know, being very certain. And if it doesn't work, you know, they still, because their mind is so set on being right, they can't, you know, back up and say, well, oh, I was wrong, let's try something else. And if you don't have that mindset, it's very hard to teach someone, because you have to be like the trial and error. And many teachers, they feel like they have to know everything, like have the fucking magic curse, sorry.
Hey, you got it. F-bomb at 42. More goes to David. I almost said it earlier. I was like, no, hold on. I'll use another swear word that's not as offensive.
Like they have a magic you know, crystal ball with all the answers in, and that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Even me, having heard hundreds and hundreds of voices, you know, I have a very good ear for voices, but I can listen and I can still be, well, it might be this or that. Let's find out. It's not like, no, it's not a fucking, second one. It's not a competition. You know,
have an allowance of more because it's your second language.
Yeah, once you cross the F threshold, it's wide open.
But I had one teacher. She's the one I go to whenever I have something, you know. Still, she was like, you know, it was almost magic. You know, she could listen to someone. You know, how's your knees? What? You know, she would start that like, you're like, you know, it was just, I don't know.
So it's like holistic vocal coaching. Like everything is connected to everything. I mean, that makes sense if you're like a spiritual or like a medium. It's strange to hear someone say that, but like to me, I'm like, that's cool. Like she probably knows that you like twisted your ankle or something, and maybe you have a pain and you're
weird, or
right,
you know,
you're not applying
blah, blah,
yourself.
blah.
That's cool.
But I mean, to me, it's more like, okay, I can hear something around here is, you know, being and you know, it's like the hen or the egg. I don't know if it's the jaw who's tensed and that makes the tongue tense up, or if it's the other way around, and I don't really care. I just, you know, all I care about is finding, you know, how to get rid of it and make it feel good and sound good. And I don't care. I don't have to tell you the Latin names of the muscles that are producing this, you know, in order to help you to relax your jaw, or you know, find a better placement of your tongue. And that is also something that I notice a bit in some online teachers and vocal coach react videos. You know, the enormous amount of terminology and physiology that gets swooped over everyone who is listening, and it's sometimes used as a kind of a way to make the student feel less.
Right.
You know, or at least to show, I know all of these fancy words and phrases, and you don't. Therefore, I am better than you, and you should listen to me.
Congratulations, you've mastered a dead language.
Yeah,
I just want to sing better. I just want to be able to hit this high C. Like, as a teacher, like, this is really, I'm absorbing. I'm hopefully not sitting here with my mouth open, gaping, but I'm absorbing what you're saying, and it's resonating, no pun intended, with me. It's like, you know, as a vocal coach, instructor, extraordinarily knowledgeable, to have a wall full of degrees and papers and stuff, but you don't
only
use
one
that
degree.
One. Okay. Well, maybe it's a really big degree, or it's a really small wall, so it could fill a wall either way. Shine a light.
I have
on
albums on my wall.
Right. That's better. That's like, look at all the stuff I've done. Like, are you showing your students, like, well, I did this album, I did this? You know, you don't. I don't get that vibe. Right. You're focusing on the student and taking that spotlight off of them. And, you know, the YTU, the YouTube University professors that are out there, they're just trying to get that spotlight. They're not, they want hits. They're trying to make money. They're not really educators. You are an educator. And one of the things you said that touched on something for me, I was watching your testimonials, and I was amazed that the people you have on the first testimonial, I'm like, I know these singers. Like, I know Ryan from Archangela. I know, of course, Adrian. I know John Spires from Threads of Fate, which, you know, Jack introduced. His engineering introduced me to some of John's music. But the students you have that are also teachers, they seem to make the best teachers who are also students, I guess I'm trying to say. So, like, a teacher that is always learning is better than a teacher that's like, I'm the greatest, no one's better than me, I know everything. Because there's always somebody that knows something more, especially with AI coming around. There's going to be a database that's greater than someone that says they know everything.
Yeah, and sometimes you're going to be wrong. You know, you are.
Always.
Statistically, you're going to be wrong.
At least 50% of the time in most cases. Like,
and I mean, and then it's all about how you handle that. If you enter the situation, you know, like, you know it all, and you're wrong, then it's a lot harder to back off.
You're like, and digging the hole. It's like,
you're digging your own hole, and many people don't back off. They just force on. And this is not just teaching. This is anything.
Yeah. Our political climate, I don't get into it, but that's the thing. You're wrong. Just say you're wrong. Like, if you're not wrong, you can't be a diehard where I'm just going to say I'm right no matter what.
Yeah, and that's some smart dude somewhere sometime said that you're not listening if you are not open to change your mind. Most people just listen. He probably phrased it smarter because he was probably smarter. But, you know, if I am listening to you, and the only, you know, most people just listen enough to make a response. And I feel that I have to be open enough. I don't have to change my mind, but if I listen to you talk, I need to be open to the thought of changing my own opinion. And if I'm not, then I'm not really listening. And that is also very important, I think, when you teach, because I must always have my ears, you know, on point or active, because I must always, you know, be open to the idea that, okay, what I heard was wrong. And sometimes, you know, it's like I try to make noticeable changes even during first lesson, but sometimes, you know, it's like during the fourth lesson, it's like, oh, of course it is this or that, and you know,
not enough coffee. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Or you get caught up and you listen to the wrong stuff, or like, oh, I should have noticed this the first time. Oh well.
Right. Now I wanted to ask some questions real quick. Very, very like I love your methodology of explaining things. It's I get the vibe like you really are inspired to teach people, and that's the thing. People listen but like don't learn, and they aren't open to like a scientific method almost, where you're presented with information, you understand the information and then process it. And it's like I can change my opinion or what I think about something because I was presented evidence that discredited what I thought before. I think that's more taught in the European settings of education, definitely not here anymore. Here it's like, this is what you learn and just get out of the class and move on. But do you, you've mentioned multiple languages. You speak just Swedish and English, or you have more as well?
Well, I have, of course, Swedish is my native tongue, so I speak it well. And, we're taught English since like when you're 9 or something in Sweden. And especially if you're very interested in pop culture and music, you learn it better. And I also think, and, so I think that I speak English well enough. I mean, it could always be better, but I enjoy reading in English, and but I still, when I watch movies, I still have the subtitles in Swedish. I always do. But I also learned German for a couple of years in school, and I had a vacational job, or like summer job, in a fish store where there were lots and lots of German tourists. So I got to really speak German a lot. And of course, I sang a lot of German when I studied. So I have German, and then my wife's Norwegian. And, it's Swedish and Norwegian is really, really close. But there are grammatical differences, and some words have different meanings. But like if I am talking to one Norwegian person like this, we always, meet somewhere in the middle, and it's all good. But like if you're at a family gathering and it's like people from all over Norway with all the different accents and dialects and stuff, and they all speak at the same time, then I get, a little lost.
Yeah.
I could probably fool a Norwegian person for a minute or so, that I am actually Norwegian, and I understand it very well. I listen to a lot of Norwegian audiobooks when I met my wife, just to,
right.
Getting to understand my parents-in-law better.
Yeah.
I listen to all the Harry Potter books in Norwegian.
Nice.
For example. So, so I would probably count Norwegian as a fourth, but it's so close. It's so close to Swedish, so it's, probably like sometimes you guys, I'm only assuming that, very, very broad Scottish accent could be hard even for you.
Oh yeah. Even like people from different parts of the United States is, like a thick Southern accent versus
Florida,
like the New York thing, or like there's so many different. It almost sounds like a different language.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. So like three and a half.
Do you prefer to sing in one language or another? And there's a couple things language related I'd like to throw out there, and you can answer it as preferred. Sure. So you do a lot of background vocals and choral work for other bands. I haven't heard of a lot of them. I'm very ignorant to like more European metal and symphonic things. It's just I never really got into it until more recently, and I've pretty much dipped my toe in and listened to one band, and they're like, "Oh, that's good, I like that," and I go a little bit far. I was like, "Oh, listen to that," and then I'll hear something that I don't like. I'm like, back out of the out of the symphonic pool. But do you get to do much as far as lyric writing? And do you think in one language or another when you're working on songs or doing fill-in parts? How does language affect your performance as a singer that's like, we're going to hire you to do work on an album? And then how is it with like students and how you think in a teaching aspect?
I yeah, I'm gonna see what I can unpack out of this. You know, I of course I sing a lot in Swedish,
Oh, I don't
and
laugh
you know
there.
I've always been singing in Swedish. You know,
Right,
you know
right.
when you're a kid, you start out singing children's songs in Swedish. But I don't think in metal. I'm looking at the albums now. I don't think I ever did.
Oh, there you
I
go.
don't think
Look at me.
I don't
Wow.
think I ever did a Swedish metal album or Swedish,
Mm.
singing in Swedish. You know, sometimes when you do cover stuff, you do Swedish rock music and sing in Swedish. But I never recorded in Swedish. I recorded in French for
Oh,
like a
wow.
parody song that we did with Contis, and it was just they had to read it to me, and it was like, oh, um,
It couldn't
huh,
be as bad as Dave Mustaine trying to sing in French,
à
I'm
tout le
sure.
monde.
Yeah. Oh my God. And that's like the only French song any metalhead pretty much knows is that
Yeah,
one.
but they had a Canadian dude teach him. That's why, because you can see that in the documentary about the recording of Euthanasia album.
Oh,
So they
right on.
have so it was a French Canadian dude. So that's
Mm.
probably why
Hot.
he messed up. I'm a huge Megadeth fan, by the way. But yeah, getting back to language, I think that singing in English, you even if you're good at English, you kind of get a little bit detached. So I don't really think that much about lyrics, at least not when I do choir and backing vocal stuff. Then it's just trying to yeah hmm. I don't know how much I can mention. He will probably not see this, but making backing vocals for Fabio Leone, then you have to match not only the vibrato but the pronunciation too, because if he sings and I'm adding kind of straight stuff in the background, it sounds weird. So I have to redo lots of it and just and also match the pronunciation. And that is, I think, a skill, or I don't know what, but I think it has something to do with musicality. But I'm pretty good at imitating, and I always was, even as a kid. Imitating, doing theater stuff, or accents or dialects or whatever. So I always try to match the lead singer. And like I said, when I do backing vocals, I don't really think about the lyrics at all. And when I do lead vocals, of course, I am a huge musical theater nerd, so almost everything I do kind of gets filtered through that. And I try to, find what the song is about, and see if there is any way that I can put some, weight to certain words or whatever. But and I also I don't know, I think that I am thinking in English now, but I'm not sure really. I haven't stopped to think if I actually do. But for me, it's now, since I've been teaching more and more people with other languages, it's I kind of click, you know, and I feel it has helped me a lot, teaching. Also, there is, with students from different countries and different languages. Even though I'm not a speech therapist or phoniatrical expert in any way, I've started to learn, like, okay, people from around this area of the world, you know, if they have more consonant heavy languages, you know, Czech Republic, Ukraine, or whatever, you know, then it's like, okay, this is probably going to be the problem. Or if you're from a country or where you speak a language with many diphthongs, where the vowel switch during the word, Swedish got that, you know, especially where I'm from, you know, we have diphthongs, heavy diphthongs. So I have to think about that when I sing, because I tend to flip earlier. If you sing I go I instead of I, and my instinct would be I, and sometimes we don't want to land on the E, we want the ah. And I usually have the example that I usually do is I think this is right. It's from the musical Les Miserables, you know, the God on high, hear my prayer. Or rather, you would do it, hear my prayer.
Right. So the first one was your Swedish.
Prayer. That's a triptong.
That's crazy. Just hearing you do that, like dropping it like that, it's just wow.
I've never thought about that aspect of singing in such clear terms, but it always really bothers me when like when people don't pay attention to this when they're singing parts, and the vowels that you land on can really affect like how a lyric lands emotionally.
Yeah,
so
the feel is completely different.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about this when recording singers, and then it's really interesting thinking about that from the perspective of the language that's native to them. It's really cool.
Yeah, and also, you know, with translations and stuff, you know, we always have, you know, Disney movies are always dubbed over here, so you know it's always Swedish actors and Swedish translations, and of course with opera or everything. And if you have, if we talk about opera, you know, if there is a, they probably wrote the because first you have the libretto and then you write the music, and then, you know, amore or whatever, you know, but amor, then you have the singer will sing, oh, you know, nice round, and then the Swedish translator comes along, amore, love, or in Swedish, kärlek. And then you get kärlek, you know, you get amore, you know, it's a completely different sound.
Yeah.
And
even where, you know, if you go to Denmark, and by the way, we fucking hate the Danes, you know, but
wow,
kärlek, you know, it's
what did Denmark do to you? What happened in your childhood? When were you burned by?
Oh, this is a huge can of worms.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready?
I was waiting for you to preface it with, well, no Danes are watching this, but we fucking hate them.
Yeah. You know, we've been to war with them for like a couple of 100 years, but actually the area where I live has historically been Danish for a longer period of time than it's been Swedish, but we took it back a couple of 100 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. And I actually took the courage to cross the bridge and go to Denmark to see Seven Spires earlier
name
this
drop.
year.
There we go with the name dropping.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually the only time that we've hung out in person.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it was like January or February this year when you were on the tour with the Twilight Force.
Yeah, I can't believe that was this year. It seems like 3 years ago already. Crazy.
How was the show there? Is your winter time the same as the States here? Is it winter right now for you guys?
It was probably pretty cold. Yeah, it's autumn now for us.
Yeah.
But I wasn't that cold when I as far as I remember.
Well,
Yeah,
the fire
Vivaldi
from the
was
stage was like keeping you warm, of course.
that
It was
venue
like,
was toasty.
yeah, it wasn't that big, so it got very warm.
Mm.
I think, was it your first show?
Yeah, it was the first night of the tour, so very eventful evening.
Yeah.
Do they have AC over there? Unlike Sweden, that doesn't have AC from our last.
Usually
few
we
guests.
don't need it, but I no, I don't remember if they had it that evening. You know, we were mostly hanging up upstairs,
Oh, in the venue,
hanging
yeah.
out upstairs. But of course I went down for you guys and for Twilight Force. But I don't remember really if it was super warm or not.
It was warm for me.
I can guess that it was, yes.
That was like the tour of like whiplash when it came to temperatures, because we picked up the bus in Germany and then we drove to Copenhagen, and it was before the drivers figured out how to turn the climate on in the bus. So we were freezing all the way, like all like bundled up in every jacket and every piece of clothing that we brought, like in our bunks. And then you'd go, like the venues would be relatively normal temperature, and then the show would start and it would just get hot for all the ones that were full. And so we were drenched, and then we go back out to the
freezing bus,
freezing again, and it just, so on and so forth.
Nightmare.
It eventually evened out, but there was also one night where like the heat got turned on full blast, so everybody was sweating, and my suitcase in the bay where all our personal stuff was actually melted. Like I have a suitcase that the plastic is like, it looks like Superman like punched it. It melted from the temperature that we were all sleeping in.
Wow,
that's insane.
Yeah.
Everyone that wants to be a touring professional musician, get ready for melted luggage. 800 blankets and t-shirts.
the warmest I've had are the two occasions, both in Paris. It was we opened for Myref in Paris at a very old place. It's called Divan du Monde. That's exactly how you pronounce it.
How do you put that in a song like Ratatouille? How would you sing that?
Divan. But it was so warm. It was like in the middle of the summer, and it was so warm, and there was no AC. And we started out, and we were almost dying. And then when Myref came on, it was even more people. And I remember they had to take a break because the drummer he almost fainted. And we're like, we're from Africa, and we're, wow. This is too warm for us,
That's insane.
That and then I think it was back in 2018. At least over here it was like the warmest summer ever, and we were in we were making a music video, and we were in a kind of a shed, with a tin roof.
Oh.
And with all the makeup people coming in, it was like, yep, another round. that was that, just binging, so much water. So that's the extreme on that side. And having cold gigs over here, it also happens, of course.
Right. So speaking of extremes, pretty much all of your students that I've come across here researching, they're all performing vocal musicians. Can you, I don't need you to give away secrets, but how do you sort of prep singers? Because it seems like no singer gets enough sleep. No singer hydrates properly. They try to, but these are all things like, are these kind of just standard things that you sort of teach performing musicians, where you're freezing one night, you're on fire the next night, all these different things? How do you sort of prep and prime a vocalist that's going to be touring for all of these variables they're going to come across within like 24 hours at a time?
I try to be a little unspecific and just talk about more like your overall health reflects on your voice. So sleep well, eat well, drink well, don't scream, don't be careful when you speak to people after the show, because that's probably when you're gonna mess up your voice. Oh, very glad you enjoyed the show. That's when you mess up. Because most singers, when they sing, they kind of click. They turn on the stuff that they know. So it's mostly stuff around, and I think that let's see how I phrase this well. Being nervous and anxious about being nervous about and anxious about all of this is probably worse than not sleeping 8 hours. So if you sleep 6 hours, that's fine, as long as you don't get anxious. Oh, I only slept 6 hours. Or use it as an excuse or something. Well, I only slept 6 hours and the sun was in my eye and I ate a lemon yesterday and my toe hurts a little bit. That's why it didn't sound good. We don't need those excuses. We right. You were probably amazing. No one cared if that note was a little bit off.
Right. Your teacher wasn't in the audience, hopefully, so no one knows how terrible it was.
Yeah, and we don't hear shit either. When we're at a show, I turn off that part.
Right. When you're not like
show.
taking notes. You're like, oh, I gotta put this down.
Never.
Here.
I wish I had little recordings of you saying these things for like when touring with Adrian, because she's so self-critical.
Hey, we got the recordings now.
Yeah. Like if I say like, oh, nobody probably heard that. Like you sounded great. Like I heard you on stage, whatever. Like she won't really know, like hear it. But like I think when you say stuff like that, she's like, oh yeah, okay. My teacher said it was cool, so I'm just gonna have like a arsenal.
Yeah.
Sound bite the crap out of her. Just be like, here you go.
Yeah, but also the anxiousness and fear and nervousness is worse than drinking 1 glass of water less.
It's a mental thing. From what I'm gathering, what you're saying, it's more of your confidence and knowing that you know what you're doing to cancel out the anxiety or the nervousness. But I think all musicians, that butterfly feeling, that little bit of anxiety that you then crush when you're on stage, I think that's like a natural high almost. Like I don't know if I could really believe a musician that was like, I never get nervous, I never get butterflies, my cat never comes into the scene when I'm doing a podcast. Like to me, it's like that little nervousness that you overcome, like that's an amazing thing to experience.
But that's the thing, overcoming it or handling it, because the stress that builds up, it is just a natural reaction to you facing something.
Right.
And back in the day it was a lion or a bear or whatever. Now it is a crowd,
rain,
or a job interview or whatever. But the thing is that your brain prepares your body for fight or flight, and you have to get rid of all of that, because cortisol and all the stress hormones that goes out into your body, and the extra blood to all the muscles. So you're like, something's gonna happen. Something physical needs to happen for you to get rid of this. And that's if you go up on stage and you kick ass, then you did something with all of that energy. And that's when nervousness or stress, when it turns into anxiety, that's when you don't do anything about it. When you get this stress and nothing happens, you're prepared to fight or flee. Your body is prepared to run or fight, and you do nothing. And then all of this stuff, it has to go somewhere, and
right.
it just stays there, and then it's self-triggering, because then we start to use our intelligence, and the what ifs, and starts, what if this happens and this happens, and our brain doesn't really make a difference between imaginary threats and real ones.
Right.
So when we start to think about what could happen, then we get the stress hormones rushing again, and they fuel themselves over and over. I could close my eyes here, and I'm not terrified, but I have a huge respect for heights. I don't go high up if I don't really have to. So I could close my eyes now and pretend that I'm standing on some fucking construction,
like a scaffold or something.
And it's shaky, and looking down. And if I close my eyes and do that, I can feel that my pulse is, raising, and and if you do this to people who are terrified of spiders or snakes or whatever, they freak out, and that's just imagining the thing.
Your brain manifests stuff. So a thought or something happening to one of your external senses, your brain, like you said, your brain doesn't know the difference. It's electrical triggers. So constantly being anxious about something, or you're afraid of heights, you start thinking about it. Yeah, you might as well be there, because your brain's like putting itself there. That's why dreams are so
and
intense,
you get afraid of making a mistake.
Right.
And as soon as the thing, we're not only getting physically active. If you get real stressed, well, go outside and run a little bit, or do 10 push-ups or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is also, we lose brain capacity. The CPU is
that's beyond processing.
And when we panic, when we're at the lowest in this upside down pyramid, when we're down here, then we're panicking, then we run over other people. If it's like mass shootings, or concerts, when people are crushed, we don't give a shit. I will run you down to get out of here.
Right.
And that's stupid. Stress makes us stupid, and when we get stressed, we do mistakes. We make mistakes. We don't think. So basically, if you're getting stressed or whatever before a show or an exam at school or whatever, take fucking 5 minutes, sit still, sit down, close your eyes, and just take deep breaths for 5 minutes. And it's gonna
find your relaxation location
better.
in your head. Right.
And as like a performer as well, I used to think that these kind of things were like, that's it's not really going to make a difference, or like, I can deal with it, it's no problem. But it makes a huge difference, and people don't.
I just do my scales one more time, it will be better.
Yeah, like it I mean, even to that degree, like either doing something physical or intentionally sitting down and try to relax and break the like anxiety flywheel really changes like the physical quality of how you perform. And I think a lot of people write that off until they have a worse experience,
Yeah.
It's super cool. And for singers, I think it's probably much, much worse, because so much more of your instrument is attached to the rest of your body and flooded by anxiety hormones and like really affected by your mental state. So
but I mean, shaky hands is not a good thing if you're about to finger pick or
that's no good either. But I mean, okay, fair enough.
But I usually say, when I
unless you're playing a banjo, then you can have shaky hands. Nobody cares. It's a banjo. We just got a banjo for some strange reason. Something new.
I usually, when I talk about this with students, I usually say, okay, so this is the hippie part.
The kumbaya section of the
Yeah.
The ghost
And
saw what you
sometimes you have to do the scientific explanation of it. And I'm no scientist, but sometimes you have to do that, and sometimes you just show them, and it works.
Right. I think a lot of all of this, the talk of like the anxiety and the doubt, it leads to imposter syndrome, which I've seen and heard Adrian speak about a lot. So your brain basically convinces your psyche that you're not good enough to be doing what you're doing, regardless of what all of your outside senses are telling you. Like, you're on stage in front of 50,000 people. You were hired to perform by all of these great artists that you've respected. What's more likely, that they're all wrong and you have no talent, or you have all this talent but just have to convince yourself that you're qualified to get past this anxiety that's like crushing you? And she's been in a lot of therapy, and she talks about this a lot, but it's very inspiring to see someone identify these things and then have treatment to overcome them. But yeah, your brain's going to make you great or terrible. Your abilities are some of that, but if someone's confident in what they're doing, even if they make mistakes and whatnot, it doesn't matter. And we talked about this a lot with our last guest, was your recovery and how your whole vibe is presenting what you're doing. Singers seem to fall into two categories. They're either constantly self-doubting themselves and do an amazing performance, and like, Jack says, like, we got to have sample bites of reinforcement to say it's okay, you did this, it's still good, or they're so confident and cocky and it doesn't even matter that they're terrible. Like, there's no happy medium. Like, and I guess being an artist, you're not going to get a happy medium. It's extreme.
I think that's musicians or artists in general. Like, I either see like hyper self-critiquing or hyper overinflation of your own abilities, because it's hard to find a balance, because we feel so strongly about what we're doing and want to be really good at it. And so you either fake yourself out into thinking you're better than you are, or you don't know how to like really allow yourself to feel like you did it well.
But this is the self-doubt and all of that. It also has to do with the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, sure.
That is, as soon as you start to learn stuff, then you realize, oh, this field is vast. And then, you have to handle that in some way. And if you handle it badly, then you could just crawl up and and cry about it. Or, okay, so I know this field is vast, and I will probably never, master it all, but I will humbly continue my path. If you do that, and you're humble about it, and you are open to the possibility that you might be wrong, that's how you learn stuff, and you ask questions. But if you see, oh shit, this is vast, and then you're kind of panicking, and you're getting all defensive, like, well, I know my shit, all of this doesn't matter, this is unimportant stuff, then you're probably gonna become unpleasant to hang out with and not learn as much. I don't know about you. This you might perhaps recognize, Jack. I don't know about you, but I come from a very, very, very small town, like 17,000 people, and then I have to, I studied in the next city that's like 30,000 people, something like that, before I went to the 300,000 people city where I studied at the academy. And once I came to the academy, when I was in these small, I don't know if I was the best, but I was really good.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I already know where you're going with this.
Half prodigy-ish, and then you come to the academy, it's like, you're average at best, you know, or and then you can also, you know, tackle that in different ways. You can cry about it, or you can like, okay, you know, just learn. And those who handled that badly, they never got good.
Mm-hmm. Super true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a very similar experience growing up, kind of where not only did not a lot of people do what I wanted to do, like play really fast heavy metal guitar. You know, the music scene where I live is like singer-songwriter cover bands kind of playing the hits for the tourists, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's really not much else. And so then going from being like the whiz kid, like, you know, 14-year-old guitar player, to going to like the biggest music school for contemporary music in the country, suddenly everybody around you is better, and it's very confusing. But there's also so much information there to soak up, so you either do it, or you skip class and smoke weed all day, and then you fall by the wayside. And you know, I made my choice, and some people made theirs. It's cool. Sorry, go ahead.
No, when was this? Like 13 years ago ish? 14, when you were 14 something? I'm assuming your age now, I'm guessing.
I don't like that you said that out loud, but you're right.
Well, it's on the internet. I could have been like, well, here you go.
Yeah. So it would have been 12, maybe 11 years ago that I went to Berkeley.
Okay. So yeah, so we had internet, but not as much as now.
Yeah, there was, at least in the guitar community, there was some widely available stuff out there, but not like it is today.
Yeah. So you weren't as bombarded with stuff, and you know, I mean, you probably were a little bit, but you know, you had your teachers at school, and you
had to go looking for information, and it was there to be found, but it wasn't like shoved down your throat, kind of like it is today. You know, there's no like entertainment culture back then behind vocal coach reacts or guitar player reacts, or, you know, 5 things you can learn on guitar to impress Dave down the street.
Or Dave in Sweden.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that you know, it's when we speak about, you know, being from different generations and stuff, it's different how you learn stuff, and it's I see when I kind of dip my toes into the Reddits, the singing Reddits, you know, it's all anxiety, anxiousness, and a lust for validation, and I'm so happy that I got to grow up releasing demos that was only heard by 50 people, and not competing with the entire world when I release my first song. Because if you do that on Spotify today, or you release it on YouTube or whatever, you know, in 24 hours there will be people in Cambodia or Brazil telling you how much you suck, you know. And
we're waiting for that one for our podcast here. So anyone in Brazil wants to tell us how terrible this is, please in the comments.
But you know, please comment below. But you know, when we released our demos as kids, when we did our fucking punk metal shit, you know, no one heard it. So and if people didn't like it, we didn't know.
Right. No one's gonna write you a scathing letter when they're 15.
No.
Like, your guitar's out of tune. Are you playing through a crate? What is wrong with you? Your singer, is he in another state? Is he in a trash can? What's going on? No one did that because it's too much trouble. You just didn't listen to it anymore.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks to have that be the case now, because so much of how you learn is by doing and making those mistakes. Like the difference between the first time I recorded anything to the second was insane. And then, you know, it goes up and up and up. And like you said, as you go, you learn more and more and more things you don't know. But those first few experiences of just having the ability to make a recording or write a song or make a demo, it totally changes your perspective from never having done it before. But then now anybody who's never done it before can be the first to comment on your first time trying it and have a million opinions that they know nothing about. So it's tough to filter.
Probably speaking over your head too, like, oh, so you're using and then insert the plugin, blah blah blah. You should be, and you know, as a 17-year-old kid using free shit, you know, you get told like you have to buy this very super expensive thing, otherwise you suck. You know, it's just so. I About the time when I started at the academy, I was a little bit of a dick about other singers.
Well, you're honest about it. Like how many?
Yeah, I
How
am.
many
I
dicks are gonna
am
be like,
because I
no,
recognize it
I'm
in younger people today. You know, I had a hard time complimenting other singers, not only around me, but you know, whenever someone put on a song, you know, I always felt that I had to be critical about something because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do now when I'm supposed to be a voice teacher. But that's also a thing about teaching. You know, I know now that if a student feels good about themselves at the end of a lesson, they will be more prone to practice before the next lesson and want to improve. If they feel good, they will do better. So those, like I said, the Whiplash movie, if you've seen it, Jack.
I haven't seen it, but I know the memes.
It is painfully accurate.
What is that? I have no idea what that is.
It is a movie about a dude who I don't know what if it's Juilliard or whatever it is, but he's a drummer and he gets accepted, and it's about the meanest motherfucking teacher there is. He is, you know, name calling. He is like the genius of the school, and everyone's afraid of him. And you know,
he's got tenure and can't be fired ever.
Yeah, exactly. And he's the guy behind the "Not My Tempo" memes. Not quite my tempo, because it starts out like "Not quite my tempo," and then he, you know, started "Not quite my tempo," and then he rages, throws the chair like. But you know, for some that is encouraging, but it's a bad form of encouragement. You know, you're you know, I want my students to feel good, and that doesn't mean that I lie and I don't sugarcoat things, but the overall sensation of the lesson should be that we feel good about this. This is fun. We have a plan. I believe in you. You can do this. All of this you do awesomely. These 4 or 5 things we're going to work on until next time. And, you know, always, you know, make sure that you laugh a couple of times. if you don't laugh during at least once during your lessons, you know, it's, you know,
something's wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong. You know, and you know, the thing is, it's my responsibility to you know, the mood of the lesson is my responsibility, not the students.
Right, you're the teacher. You're the sensei.
I'm responsible.
You're the Jedi master. Your Padawan's not showing you, well, this is how you do this. And if they are, you're like, well, I should be your student. Like, let me switch this Zoom call around.
Yeah, I mean, many of my students have more live experience and do stuff that I can't do or sing better than I do. But what I do really, really, really well is I can listen to a voice and I can hear and see what's going on, and I can translate that into like, okay, so I know that this sound means this. and I have the ability to explain, like, change this in this way, and then I can hear the difference. So that is what I do very well, and what I dare say it, I do it better than most. I can do this really, really well. There are other things that I can't do as well, but this I do really well. I can hear a voice, and I can hear all the different aspects of it, and I also have the ability to explain in a way that the student understands. And I think, Jack, that we talked about this in Denmark. Remember the visualizing thing? We're talking about the way I see voices and you see mixes.
It's like synesthesia.
I do remember having this conversation.
Yeah.
It's super cool. And the other thing that I've noticed, I know a lot of people that take lessons from you, and the way that anyone describes learning from you is that the way you frame the environment it's never about anyone meeting your expectations. Like it's so easy for a bad teacher to be, it's always the student versus the teacher's expectations, and they just have to try to reach that level of, I impressed, or I did the thing right. But when people take lessons with you, it seems like it's always you and the student versus the problem, and it's the sum of your combined knowledge. Like you said, there's things that a student might do that you don't know very much about, and vice versa, but it's always your combined skill set versus the problem. And I'm sure through teaching people this way, you also learn a lot about a lot of things every day. And I think that's such a more inspiring environment than just, dealing with the guy who's going to throw a chair at you if you didn't nail the C major scale or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a singer too, so I enjoy the spotlight, but I don't like preaching.
Mm-hmm.
If as soon as a lesson starts to be more about terminology or physiology or me, then I feel it's wrong. And I don't know if I lost track, but yeah, I probably did. Yeah,
that's okay.
I lost it. Yeah. Oh, the visualization. Yeah.
What was that? Hold on, rewind, pause.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're back. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right. So yeah, I used to think that this was something that would eventually get me locked up, but I see voices. It's like I see dead people, but I see voices. When I hear someone sing, I see the it's like an X-ray of sorts, but with colors and shit, and things are moving around, and it's just a way for my brain to help me understand. That's what I've been told by people who know how the brain works. Like, well, it's just a way for
psychiatrists.
Yeah, it's one of those. Like, this is just a way of your brain to visualize and help you understand what it is you're doing. Because sometimes I just know, I hear and I can see this, and the colors change, and I can see that this and this happens, and I can see that this needs to happen for something to get a result.
It's like a seventh sense that you have.
It's the combined, of me hearing and the stuff that I know about the voice. And it's just translated and visualized by the brain. And I remember we talked about that, about pulling something out of the mix, or, where it's placed, or whatever. That it was something similar.
Yeah. It at least a similar way that we visualize things in that way, like as a system externally, that when you tweak this one thing, what happens? When you change this, what happens? And it's all to get the desired result.
Yeah.
So I don't think I could recreate the conversation entirely so that anyone watching would understand, but
yeah, it has to be like 120 degrees. You're anxious. It's the first podcast ever in Europe.
Yeah.
And you really just want to go to sleep. So all those elements. It's really awesome to know that you as a teacher are visualizing things and are able to pinpoint like what needs work. And again, that's a lot like what I'm understanding, like with a mix, if Jack's doing something, it's like, well, if I raise this frequency, it's going to bring this piece out that we need to hear. If I take this one away, it moves something back to make it, again, more fluid or more balanced. This is a great kind of a roller coaster ride going into some of the questions that I have, David, for you. One of which is, have you ever had an unteachable student, and do you want one? Me. And can someone that cannot sing and wants to be a singer, asking for a friend, can you teach someone that you hear them attempt certain things and it's like, this person just shouldn't be a singer? Not that it would be mean to say that, but you could be like, look, you can play these other instruments, but singing's probably not your jam right now. Like, how do you approach that also?
I would quote legendary voice teacher named Sergius Kagan. He taught at Juilliard like in the 50s or something, and he wrote a book called On Studying Singing. And he is vicious as hell. But he's full of one-liners like this. It's like he says that to sing for your own pleasure or enjoyment, that only requires the will to sing. And to sing for other people's enjoyment, it demands a certain level of excellency. And, you know, if you like to sing, sing. You know, sing lots and lots, join a choir, sing, go to karaoke nights, record yourself, do stuff. You know, don't mind what other people do. You don't have to be a professional, well-paid, world-traveling, touring musician. So unteachable, no, but there is, you know, if I were to start playing soccer and I would immediately go for the same level of training as Zlatan Ibrahimovic, our big Swedish national hero, I would probably fail. And if I imagine that that's where I'm going and I'm gonna be there soon, then I will probably feel like a failure. So it's all about, you know, what it is you would like to achieve. And I've never had a student that's unteachable. And especially in my day job where I teach, you know, we get all kinds of students. We get very, very, very good singers, and we have people who never sung before. Most of my private students, they have a goal. They have like, okay, I come to you with this. I want to learn this, this, and this. And some of these, they're like, I don't know. I've never sung before. So I don't know. So it's very different when I teach privately and at work. And no, there is, if you're a teacher and you say that I can make you a superstar in 10 lessons or whatever, you're just lying. If you say that you can do that to everyone, that's just lying or like PR. So no, I can't make anyone a professional, well-paid singer. No, I cannot do that, but I can make anyone a little better. Cool. If that's sufficient.
Yeah. I mean, it's being realistic.
One more thing. Sometimes it's not only about the voice. Sometimes it's about musicality, and that is something that many singers forget a lot about. You know, you can practice your voice, but you also need to practice your musicality, and that is, you know, it goes together with the voice. But many instrumentalists sing decently or very well just based on having a normal, healthy voice and having lots of musicality. If you have lots of musicality and a decent voice, you can learn, you can sing most stuff.
For people who are watching who aren't musicians, how would you define musicality in layman's?
Right. Good call.
I would say the ability to imagine pitch and rhythm in your mind, and for singers, lyrics too.
Now's her chance to shine.
Hey.
All right, kitty.
And I mean,
she wanted to sing along.
I'm only assuming that you could pick out your air guitar and play a solo, and you could, hear if your band is in tune or not on your air guitar.
Yeah,
or you could play wrong. You could, oh no, fuck,
Yeah, I have enough muscle memory and know-how of the instrument that by hearing something on the radio, I know how they probably played it.
Yeah,
is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and you could imagine a series of pitches and hear them in here. That is how I would probably describe musicality. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you know how to recreate it on any instrument, and it doesn't have to do with knowing how to write it down in sheet music. But hearing now my piano turned off, but hearing and being able to imagine pitches and rhythm, and for singers, lyrics. That is musicality to me, at least, or like a tiny piece of musicality. I mean, we could philosophically rant about this for a long time, and we could have a philosophy teacher and a musicology professor discuss this in a podcast for 3 hours.
Season 2, that would be certainly on the docket for us to have. Is just music educators can duke it out, getting dirty down.
But I mean, at least when it comes to singing, for me, it's the ability to imagine pitches and rhythm, and then eventually recreating it.
Right. Now, do you? I'm assuming this applies to any type of singing that you do. I'm curious. Do you prefer clean operatic, very pitched, correct singing, or more guttural, dirty vocals? I know you do both, but you're more of a clean singer, from what I gather correctly. What do you prefer?
Yeah, that's what I do. Like that's I sometimes describe myself as a classically trained musical theater nerd that ended up in metal.
So just power metal. You're a power metal vocalist.
No, I listen to Metallica and all that, but and Megadeth and Iron Maiden.
How do you listen to those two? Because their vocals, do you criticize vocals when you hear bands? Not Maiden. I'm not criticizing Maiden, but the first two is
I don't know. I just enjoyed it. I didn't. That was back in the day. But I listened to all those classical metal stuff, and then I got caught, bitten by the music theater bug. And so I that's what's in here. But I've always been this kind of person, okay, I don't know this, so I want to learn it. And I've always been able to, like I said, with imitating stuff, even as a kid, doing all the weird noises and the my precious. I did all of that, watching the movies and in any movie, any monster, I would, recreate it, or villain or hero or whatever, I'd always imitate it. So I always had the ability to make the noises. And then eventually I started to, and I was a little bit afraid of teaching it at first, because there was this kind of gatekeeping thing with the terminology and physiology, and it was kind of confusing for me, because I didn't have any training in that terminology. So I started to research, and this is all made up. Just like all the other, vocal terminology, it's all made up. There's no consensus. There was no big meeting 500 years ago when they decided what to call everything.
Typical gatekeeper mentality. We just make something up, and that's so
eventually I just decided, fuck that, and I will teach this my way, the same way as I teach anything else. And it's been working pretty good so far.
Cool. Yeah, so I think it was interesting for me, because when you started doing more extreme vocal styles, I was involved in some of it, from the mixing end and even just some of the listening end, and it was cool to hear someone like start basically from ground zero, but with such a huge background in the voice and singing and things. Normally it's the opposite, like metal kids learn to do the screaming thing, and then they want to learn how to sing as well, and have to learn all of this additional skill set and anatomy and control of their own systems and stuff. And it was super cool, and I think you picked it up really fast in a way that a lot of people wouldn't, with the kind of background that you have.
Because I remember when I started to do it, it was a project. It's called RIT, a Swedish black metal thingy. Because I after I did one of the streams with Adrian, I just decided, well, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. I recorded a Dimmu Borgir song and I put it up there on YouTube. And then like a week after, a friend of mine wrote me, David, we have a black metal album and we're looking for a singer. I was like, what? You're kidding me.
You're like, yeah, just like that. Can you do that for 22 minutes?
Yeah. So
You're hired.
And I got in touch with the band leader, and we just clicked, and he read like all the lyrics, like all these years I've been pointing, he read it like that, and I just recreated it with all the grunty noises. And usually I when I do a song, if I do lead vocals, I try to think of it like a work day, almost. It depends, of course, but it takes a couple of hours and some break in between, and then you have to zoom out a bit and then listen again and pick the takes and whatever. But that 10-minute epic black metal thingy that you mixed, Jack, that the Pact, I think it's called, I think I recorded it in 30 minutes, and it was like when I sent it off, I was like, no, I just I sent it off. They're like, we love it. It's awesome. And I was like, are you serious? Because it felt like cheating, because it was so easy. And it was like, so it was, in a way, it was something that's been dormant. It's been inside of me all the time. And then I finally did it. And it felt so easy that it felt like cheating. Almost, at least compared to normal recording clean vocals, at least.
Oh,
but you are Swedish. You are Swedish.
So I enjoy.
Like,
yeah, I basically, what I did? I did when I was about to record it. I went for a run and I put on some dissection and I just listened to it, and I got back and then
There you go. Perfect. Go ahead.
there's it there are a lot of aspects to extreme vocals that make it so much easier to record and make sound good. And one of those is not having to really worry about a specific pitch or tuning at all. It's just like 50% of the work doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is the harmonic content of a scream like that makes it like such an even sound that fitting it into something like metal, it just instantly sounds better by the nature of the act of doing it than, you know, a clean voice. There's so much more potential for a sung part to sound like shit.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Very much so. Short answer is I enjoy both, but I'm mostly doing clean stuff.
Right. Is there different warm-up techniques for clean versus dirty singing, or is it all sort of similar, like for prep work? That's what I was curious about.
Yeah, I mean, there are different things working. You know, when you do clean and harsh vocals, and especially if you're gonna do both, I don't think it's. I mean, yeah, you can call it warming up, but for me, it's all about focusing and finding, you know, because when you do clean stuff, it's the true vocal folds that's working, and when you do most of the grunts and all of the others, you know, it's the false vocal folds or you know, all of it just crunching together. And then when you do the clean stuff, you want to be most of the time pretty open. So it's more about focus, I think. And I mean, of course, you can warm up, you know, you know, you could do all of these kind of warm-ups.
Can I use that on a black metal album I'm getting ready to record?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a Danish black metal album, your favorite.
Fucking hate Dane.
And it's all about how Danes hate themselves.
Yeah, but they don't, you know, their language is so guttural that there is actually, and I quote this as often as I can, speech therapists, they made like a research on kids learning to speak, and Danish kids learn to speak way later than other kids, because it's kan du se Copenhagen, you know, it's all like that, and you know, it's impossible to distinguish what they're saying.
I mean, is that your biased opinion? Because I don't know any Danes. I don't know how they speak.
Lucky you. No, but no, I'm probably taking it a little bit too far. I know a couple of nice Danish people.
Yeah,
but,
the only Dane I know is that failed tennis star that falls into the category you guys were talking earlier, where he was like #1 in Denmark and then went to LA and was like number 10,000 on his block, and now he's a drummer. So that's really
Lars.
Yeah. The only Swedish name Denmarkian.
They have a couple of bands. They have Volbeat and they have this Land After Dark, and they have like a couple of bands. And of course we have Ronnie Atkins and Pretty Maids and all of that. So, but you know, it's fun. I can't make fun of the Norwegians anymore, so I have to, because I'm married to one.
Okay. So are you just kind of going down the geographical location?
Yeah, you know, they're like salmon eating, oil drilling, fucking skiing, seal clubbing terrorists.
We've got to get him on with Kim, because half of our conversation with Kim Dilla was Norway, Sweden, that whole like the seal clubbing thing. And she kind of prepped me for a lot of Swedish information from. She lives in Sweden half the year with Johan from name drop Amon Amarth, and then half the year here. And so she speaks Norwegian and is learning Swedish language. But she kind of prepped us for like Sweden. Like a lot of Swedes speak English and they like speaking English. It's sort of more of a 1.5 language, and she's trying to learn Swedish over English, and like she's trying to switch in her brain stuff coming from, you know, English as a first language and learning other languages. But we do need to ask you, we always have to have a food segment. So like, what's the deal with the tube foods over there in Sweden?
The tube?
Food, yeah, food? Foods in tubes, like the liquid format. Apparently, according to my one source, that's kind of a thing. Like you put a lot of food in liquid form in like toothpaste tubes. Or is that a small section?
We do that with some stuff, but it's mostly like stuff you put on sandwiches.
Oh, so you got ham in a tube and like cheese in a tube, or what?
Yeah, cheese, like cream cheese and stuff like that. Yeah, but I am not really my thing.
Yeah. Apparently there's some kind of caviar-ish thing in a tube, because I guess Joanne eats that quite a bit. It's like, why is this?
Alles caviar. Yes.
Awesome.
Cool. That is a thing. That is a thing. It is something that, you know, if you're visiting people, if you're visiting Swedish people abroad, they will probably ask you to bring Kalles caviar, the caviar. And it's not caviar as in, you know, the Russian.
Right. Yeah.
This is like bread, butter, and so it's not something you eat like at a fancy restaurant. It's
right. Like, it's like backpacking food. It's like, I'm gonna make a few of these and like go jog.
Yep. Like field trip, then you get a egg and caviar sandwich, you know.
It's probably the equivalent of like Vegemite in Australia, or just for here, like they have like deviled ham, where it's just like minced up pieces of pig in a paste format.
Gross.
Yeah. That's what it is. I don't know what else you call it. Meat byproduct, I guess the terminology on the grocery store shelf is.
I mean, at least you're not in the UK.
Oh, we talk about the British now. Let's go.
Yeah, you know, the shit you get served backstage when you're in UK, you know, it's
what's the worst thing you've ever been given backstage? Jack and David both answer this one. The worst catered, the worst, I like these air quotes, catered food. Is it in the UK? Do they have the worst food, or?
I mean, it sometimes when it differs, it's not because of the nation you're in, it's because the shitty level of the venue you're playing.
Right, the promoter's like, okay, 3 bottles of water for 12
But in
guys.
UK, even when they try, you know, it's like different kinds of bread with something, you know, something to put on, or like a sausage, you know. It's their breakfast is decent, but you know, everything else, you know, it's just bread.
I have a hard time criticizing UK food, because my best Brit friend that I know is also the most talented and knowledgeable chef that I know. So like anytime I've been to the UK, I'm catering aside, like, you know, usually, you know, really fluffy pizza or some shit like that. He always takes me to like places that he knows are really good, or cooks. So like all of my UK food experiences have been.
I had to try haggis when we played in Scotland, and you know, it was very, very nice, but that was a very posh restaurant, you know. It was but I mean, otherwise when you play or visit England, you know, you start to understand why Gordon Ramsay is so angry all the time.
Oh, he should be a music teacher in Boston instead of a cook. He could have a job as a
exactly
instructor.
But I don't know. It's you know, in Vienna, I was really looking forward to good food, but we got like the worst Wiener Schnitzel ever. You know, from like some what do you call it? Like a dude standing with a
Cart, like a street vendor.
Yeah, like a street vendor. You know, it was like dry French fries and chewy schnitzel and a lemon. I was like,
that bastard lemon making an appearance again in Vienna.
That's very sad.
Yeah,
I know. How do you fuck up French fries? I mean, come on.
Yeah, you
cannot
leave them out for an hour.
Culinary hate crimes, as they're called.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, man, we blew through all of the basic questions and more here today. I certainly feel 100% more educated about, you know, music and vocals and learning that information in general. Just this few minutes talking to you. And it's cool. And you certainly are doing what you're put on this planet to do. If you didn't know that already,
I didn't.
But understanding and the way you present stuff, like I'm a complete stranger. I know you and Jack have known each other for quite a while, but you know, you speak from your heart. Like I get the super cool, genuine vibe. And when you feel that from somebody like you do, you get the goosebumps on the skin, getting tingly and inspiring. Like I want to learn how to sing now. Like I've always wanted to learn how to sing. When I was a little kid, I was like in choir and stuff, and they made me sing like in front of people when I was 8 or 9 maybe, you know, and I was this chubby kid with kind of long funky hair and glasses, and I'm like in a mall singing 5 nights a week some Christmas thing. And I from there it went to, well, I want to listen to metal now, and I can't sing anymore. So like, you know, it's very inspiring hearing you talk and knowing there's people like you that are educated and present things in a way that you best think will make somebody better at doing something. But a lot to unpack for like having a goal. Like day 101 in your class is like, well, what's your goal? What do you want to do? Where do you want to end up, you know, X amount of time down the road? And I've never had a vocal teacher, because I've talked to several different people that I liked their voice and they called themselves teachers, but none of them had the insight in the approach that you have. And I don't think they should be teachers. They kind of fall in that other category. And hopefully none of them are watching, because they know who they are, because I reached out to them. But it's been quite a few. They're not all terrible.
I'm usually a nice guy, but I also want to say this, and I say this as often as I can, and I hope some of you are watching. Just because you're a great singer, it doesn't mean that you're a great teacher.
I think that's
100%.
true also with any art form or anything in general. Just because you know how to do something and you're very good at it doesn't mean you know how to teach it to somebody.
No.
Yeah.
True.
There's a definite like line between teacher and doer, and I don't feel like teaching is a failed musician for those like David, where it's like he's a teacher, man. He taught me and Jack like 1,000 things in like 2 hours.
Yeah, I am a voice teacher who also sings, not the
Right.
other way around.
Right. Yeah. That makes you as a singer even more impressive, because you have this other aspect, and you know what you're doing, like being able to hear something and translate that into a pleasant vocal experience, whether it's black metal.
That doesn't mean that I sound amazing all the time, because I don't.
Right. But well, like here's an example. I saw your video. You did a Lamb of God song, and
Jack mixed it.
The mix is fine, but like the way that guy sings. Let me explain. When you hear a person that's not very good at something so much, you get used to hearing it the way they're not very good at. And I'll say it, the dude's not a good singer in that band. He has a very mumbly, warbly, wet kind of voice. It's his thing, like not a lot of people sound like that. But then to hear someone singing from your side where it's like he's enunciating, it's clear, it's heavy and growly, but it's very precise. That's showing your ability as a singer, but it doesn't sound like the other guy. So you would have to dumb down your skill set to sound like the song you were singing. But I didn't play it expecting you to sound like that. Like a vocal instructor is not going to sing like this guy because he sings wrong on their first 3 albums. It's just like I'm not a vocalist. I couldn't do it, but I can hear something and tell whether it's kind of correct, I guess you could say. I'm very critical. I've always been into like singers and what they do. One, because I can't do it. So I'm like, well, when I hear something, like I want to break it down and understand it, even though I'm not able to. But hearing someone sing a style where it's like, well, this is more of a correct way. It's like, oh, I can understand what he's singing and it's still heavy. It is just different, you know. And most people hearing that, it's like they don't understand it. Well, I'm singing correctly. I'm doing a guttural, aggressive voice so I can still talk when I'm done. You know, it's
but you know,
for me,
it's all about the you know, even if it's harsh vocals or if it's opera or whatever, you want to understand the lyrics and hear it, and
right
and this ties into a little bit of the diphthongs and the pronunciation that we talked about, because you some death metal vocalists, they find one vowel that they sound good on, and then they have that vowel on every word. You know, it's the same all the time.
Right.
And they
it's
can't
the like
change.
tunnel thing that like, all those guys are doing.
What is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, got a little crumpled.
These days it's like the tunnel scream thing, like the Will Ramos, like Lorna Shore. Everybody's trying to do that, which is cool. But
I sometimes jokingly call them not growlers but vowlers. You know, they find one vowel,
right?
And it's the same with classical. If you sing Vincere, vincere, you know, you found one vowel that you sound good on, and you turn every vowel into that vowel.
Right. It's like they lack the confidence to move to other sounds of the alphabet, but everything's that way. Like a chef, somebody's really good at making souffle. Everything they make is going to be like kind of like a souffle. Or if they're really good at like I don't know, some fish or whatever. Like
but
they want to be confident and be like, well, I know I can do this, so let's kind of make the
because they're going to go to their kind of default setting. But it's the same with the pronunciation. Some people think that you have to do like this all the time to be understood, and especially Swedes trying to sing in English, they will overpronunciate a lot. And once you get rid of a lot of that, you also lose some tension. But also, you know, for black metal, you can learn, or growls or whatever, you can learn to pronounce so that you can hear the consonants without overdoing them. And for clean singing, I sometimes use Sting as an example. You know, I don't drink coffee, I'll take tea, my dear. I like my toast done on one side. It's very noticeable, very distinct consonants, but it's not like spitting them out. But it's, you know, it's very accurate, but not exaggerated.
Right. It's kind of the journey of the vocals, like, and that's how it should be. Like your vocals should be telling like a flowy rhythm, and that's part of what you're talking about with musicality. Is people that know that rhythm, they enunciate when they need to, and they kind of deaden and slur things and make sounds go a certain way. One of the first things when I heard Adrian sing, I love the way she makes the words sound the way they should sound to create this motion. And it's like how the ocean works, and like the tides and stuff is like moving and going. And when you hear, for me, when you hear something like that, it's like, this is like awesome. Like it makes you kind of move physically when you're hearing stuff. And Sting's, just, that's a really great example you have when you hear certain things. But then on the flip side, you hear other stuff and it's just like this constant thing. And it's like, where's this going? It's like they're in a Ferrari and it's on blocks and it's on a 10,000 RPM. This is like, it's like, what's going on there? But to hear it explained from a vocal instructor is like, okay, so I'm not crazy. That's the thing that's out there, but it's more of, people kind of getting stuck in that thing and either not knowing how to go out of it or just they don't have a desire to, or like the confidence. But there are a lot of singers out there that stress this enunciation thing. And I'm like, sometimes it's good, but not all the time, especially if a line that someone's saying, like I hate cliches in songs. Like singers that use cliches is like all the time is just like, stop doing that. And if you're using a lot of cliches, I like making Jack laugh. If you're using a lot of cliches, you don't enunciate everything because then it's super obvious what you're doing. And it sticks out to me,
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I'm out of here.
No, but I totally understand what you're saying, because it's especially when, and I think it's especially noticeable with singers who don't have English as their first language, because they think that every single consonant counts. They are all equally valued, and they're not. They're not.
Right.
They're not.
They are not all equally
They
valued.
are not.
Unless you're a Klingon.
Yeah, exactly. And that's got to do with the ability to hearing something, compressing it here and then reproducing it. And I sometimes make singers read the lyric, read it out loud. Singers who don't speak English as their first language, read it out loud as your grandmother or grandfather with very, very bad English would do it. Just to find, okay, so what is it I am probably exaggerating? If I were to speak English like I was from Sweden, it would probably sound like this. Hello and welcome. It's very nice to be here on your podcast. Because that's
Välkommen! Sorry, they have that in IKEA.
Thank you very much. My name is David Akesson, and I am from Sweden. You can probably hear it. You can hear
man,
it.
we're gonna have to redo this whole podcast with the Swedish accent. And we'll put subtitles. We'll put English subtitles.
And if I sing a song like that or read a lyric like that, I will hear, oh, so this is what my Swedish is gonna do. This is how I'm gonna fuck up. And then I, try to do the opposite.
Well, do you get a chance? Like, I know we're kind of rolling close to time here, but I did want to ask this at least. Do you recommend? So, like, if I were to hire you as a singer of a band, like, do you get leeway to rephrase things to make it more fit more of a musical flow? Especially with artists that maybe are singing in English but aren't maybe second or third language artists. Like, I would hire you saying, well, if this doesn't sound right because you know what the fuck you're doing, I want you to help like create the right words and phrasings to say things more musically.
The best example is the Cantis album that I recorded. I did all the lead and backing vocals for it. And Tony, the band leader and songwriter, he is a very, very good composer. And he is, and the albums all tell like a thematical story. It's like space stuff.
Cool.
Yeah,
Live long and prosper.
but the phrasing was very French
Oh.
in some place where he wrote the lyrics with the not lyrics but lyrics. You know, so the phrasing was kind of French, and sometimes I you know, when I noticed that, because he didn't sing it, he wrote the vocal melody and the lyrics, and once I started to sing it for this, it's wrong. It's here it becomes misfortunes, the misfortunes of the misfortunes. Oh, you're meaning the misfortunes of the people who are coming here? So no, it's misfortunes.
It's like misfortunes, not misfortunes.
Yeah, misfortunes. And then, so I said, we need something else. This is a very French phrasing. And sometimes I couldn't tell like what we should have instead. And he said, okay, I will write something new. And he will come up with new lyrics and the phrasing will be better.
Mm.
But the singer on the album before me didn't do that. So on the second Cantice album, you can hear lots of French phrasing and not as much on the third one. But that's always going to happen, you know, when you, and sometimes we have the same thing with native English speakers, because sometimes when you sing you can't have the phrasing exactly as it's spoken all the time, but sometimes it's very noticeable that it's, you know, someone with another language.
Right. Now I guess the market makes a difference too. Like if you're doing a French album for French listeners, that the cadence of how the French language is probably fine. But you know, if you want the thing to be a hit in the States, it's got to hit our ears like we're sort of used to hearing sounds.
I remember I read an interview with Tobias Forgev from Ghost, where like the producer had him change something. I think it was the word force, where the producer, the way he said it sounded like force.
The number fours.
The fours, a couple of four, but so he pronounced it like force, but force.
It made the O sound too long.
Yeah, it was in writing. So the interview was in writing, but you know, and he said like the producer told him it's such a huge difference, that it had to be changed, and then, you know, probably it's just a detail. Probably no one would have cared, but it, you know, it differs, and sometimes this one I'm not gonna do. I had one example, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, we don't want to like offend the last 3 people that might be watching this podcast.
Nope.
We got the Danes, we got chefs in the UK. Half the people that are fans of like half the bands in America.
Every single
death metal,
voice teacher
metal,
watching this.
Every teacher, half the teachers at Berkeley.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Beatles fans. I lost all the Beatles fans.
We got that out of the way with real quick.
Yeah, had to do that. But my favorite Beatles reference, I want to drop this, in Family Guy, the cartoon. Like Ringo brings Submarine to the band and like, oh, this is great. We're just gonna put this on the fridge here in the studio instead of like making a song, and they still made a song.
Yeah, like a joke about when the drummer writes a song, like, oh, this is great. We're gonna put it right here on the fridge where everyone can see it.
Unless it's Gene Hoglan. If Gene Hoglan's doing it, he's writing it all and putting his own art on the fridge himself.
Yeah, it's a stupid joke, but
it's funny. I just like it because it was a knock on the Beatles, so I had to mention that.
Who hurt you? I guess
the
it was
Beatles.
The Beatles.
It was the Beatles. Just admit, like the one guy that got killed, he was the talented one, and the rest of them aren't. admit that, and I'll respect you a little bit. Like when the guy that had the talent's gone, don't keep riding into the sunset, because the sun's gonna never set. You're just gonna keep riding.
I was at the Hard Rock Cafe in London, where they had like the jacket that John Lennon had on him when he was shot, and like the glasses with.
That's creepy.
Like, okay, I guess you would be the one going up to that. Yeah.
No, actually, quite opposite. I'd be like, I was like, am I supposed to feel like I need nourishment now looking at someone's death jacket? Like, no. I mean, I would not. To me, that's huge disrespect to John Lennon. If any of them I can respect, is him pre-Yoko, but don't put the shit he died in. That'd be like going to like there was like a strip club in Dallas that Dimebag owned. It'd be like you go in there and they've got the shirt that he got killed in hanging on the wall.
I mean, they also had Elvis's karate dress and Jerry Lee Lewis boots.
Yeah, all that stuff's fine, just not the
Hendrix's couch.
Right.
The Hard Rock in London.
Yeah, it was like
in the get all the like the weird shit over here. They have like guitars and stage clothes and stuff, but
yeah,
not...
they have that too. But this was like in a vault.
Airbrush.
I was sitting in Jimi Hendrix's couch playing like I don't remember whose guitar it was. Someone in the Rolling Stones.
Probably Ron Wood.
Remember, I did like bam, and he was no bends.
Was this in the studio?
Because it was still the original strings.
Oh wow! But this was at Hard Rock, or was this in the studio? Because
at the Hard Rock Cafe in the vault. But this was like 20 years ago.
Wow! Yeah. So you knew somebody there that let you?
No, it was for everyone.
Wow!
But it was like 10 people at a time, and it was like a little guided tour, and
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Wow. I'm sure you can't do that anymore because all the kids would be like, "Oh, Rolling Stones guitar."
Yeah.
All right, let's tune this down to Q sharp. Here we go.
Yeah. Unfortunately, America is full of Americans, and somebody definitely
and a bunch of Floridans as well. I learned recently that America is the Florida of the world. I read that somewhere. I'll put it in the links in the bottom.
Yeah, I can see that going wrong really quickly over here. Like, oh, this is one of a kind Jimi Hendrix's guitar, smash.
Right. Yeah, it would all have to be like the National Treasure plot where they switch all the originals out with like a copy. So like every night after they close, they're taking the guitar out and putting like the replacement one back and swapping it constantly. Although kids today might not even, all the YouTube virtuosos don't even know who Hendrix is, probably, sadly. On that note,
is this where I say I don't care for Hendrix at all?
Ooh.
No. After you've established your baseline, I will allow this. I like Hendrix. I'm not like bound by his abilities. I think he did some weird, crazy stuff. But if you compare that now, like if I compare Hendrix to like Jack's playing, it's like Hendrix is garbage. Like what is this?
Then I'll have to go on record saying comparing art to other art is a waste of time in the first place.
Well, Jack, would you ever perform with your guitar out of tune? Is that really art?
I mean, not intentionally.
If you're high on acid, is it art to be out of tune?
I
know.
That's actually a genuine question that we could go into. Is like, sometimes something that's slightly out of tune can sound more interesting than something that isn't. So don't get me started on that.
I grew up listening to a lot of punk. There's a lot of singers singing slightly out of tune all the time, and I love it.
Yeah.
Rancid, and for
all
the Bostoners, Dropkick Murphys,
Dead
No
Kennedys.
Effect.
Listen to some Dead Kennedys if you can stomach.
California Liberales. Oh, it's California Liberales.
I don't know. I think we all can agree that the dead Kennedys are untouchable as long as Jello is involved, but maybe not. I don't know. I love breadcrumbing Jack with the philosophical art, like defining art question, because I know he's going to be like, drop the hammer, like, stop comparing art. How many times do I have to say this?
Yeah, I'm gonna be the voice of like, why would you say that?
Right. Because I have a podcast. Why not? Why does anybody say it?
You can be the reason why everybody clicks on it, and then I'll be the reason that they stay.
They stay. Right. Exactly. No.
Guys, just one thing. If we're I can talk for longer.
Oh no. This is
I need 1 minute to take a piss.
You're taking a piss right now, David.
I think this is probably a good place to wrap it.
Yeah, no. When we get rambly, that's like our internal triggers saying, all right, step away from the buffet table. You've had enough. But yeah, no. Real quick, David, before you flood the gates, drop some of your links. Where can people find you if they want to hire you for their projects or get lessons, which expect 100 emails from me? Just drop all your communications here, and we'll also put links in the bottom.
Basically, the best is probably on Instagram. David Akesson Singer is my name there. That's probably where I'm gonna see if you write me first. But I'm on other places too. I'm on YouTube, and if you just Google my name, you'll probably find me somewhere. There is an old, ugly homepage, regular homepage somewhere.
Don't we all have that?
Yeah, I am findable.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, David, thank you again so much for hanging out with us and just educating the shit out of us, like dropping mad theory of music science on us, very humble beings in your presence. Thank you so much. And again, thanks to Jack for like reeling the fucking shit in and be like, stay for me, leave for him. That's the way our dynamic works here. But anyway, David, thanks again. Please, everybody, go check him out. Get him, in your DMs and help yourself out. You'll thank us maybe for it in the future. But I'm Xeus. This has been Sound the Grounds. Thank everyone again for stopping by, and we'll see you
very
next
much for having
time.
me.
Absolutely. You're
See
welcome.
ya.
We're going to do that next season and get the head-to-head combat happening. Stay metal. See you guys later.
Bye.